Welcome back. You're listening to Final Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, Gareth Davies. All right, the build-up to the big showdown, April 26th, between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn has been ramped up somewhat. Both of them appeared alongside Piers Morgan last week. Very interesting as well. If you haven't watched it, just type it into YouTube. I'm sure you'll find it. I want to jump straight to a piece of audio here. This is Chris Eubank speaking on that show, and he spoke about the fact that he will retire if he loses. Let's take a listen.
Chris, you said ahead of the first scheduled fight that if you lost to Conor, you would retire. Do you feel the same way now?
Yes.
So you will retire if you lose?
Yes. You know.
Really?
There is a point in every fighter's life that they will reach when they can't go any further. If I can't beat Conor Benn now, then I've reached my ceiling. Which is why this fight is so deathly important to me. Because I don't want to retire. I don't want to give up. I don't want to sail off into the sunset. I still have things to achieve.
Conor, what do you feel? You're younger, so...
Yeah, listen, I'm 28. He's done what he's had to do in his career. He's finished.
You wouldn't quit if you lost this fight?
No, of course not. Not that I plan on losing the fight, not that I think I will lose the fight. The reality is, you can lose fights. I will lose fights in my career. Not to this man.
But what would it mean to lose to him?
Oh, it'd be painful.
What would it mean as a Ben to lose to a Eubank? Because for viewers who don't remember, you know, your dad fought his dad twice. The first fight, Chris Eubank Sr. won, and the second one was deemed a draw. Many felt your father won that second fight, but it was a draw. So as the scorecard stands, a Ben has never beaten a Eubank in the ring.
And they never will.
Chris Eubank Jr. saying he will retire. I hear this from boxers all the time. I will retire if I lose, or let's bet my whole purse and nothing really happens. But I will say this though, Gareth, if he were to get beat by someone that's now almost become his nemesis, who's jumping up in weight, etc., etc., I mean, there'll always be big fights out there for Chris, and I guess it depends on the manner of defeat. But it is quite a difficult comeback story if he were, say, to get knocked out by Conor Benn. I mean, there might be some truth in what he's just said there.
Oh, yeah. Well, like you said, the four words there that are crucial are the manner of defeat. If it's a controversial, close fight in which we disagree with the outcome and the general public does, then they'll do it again for even more money. So there's always that caveat. But if he gets roundly beaten and knocked out and knocked about by Conor Benn and stopped in 4 rounds as he did against Liam Smith, look what they managed to do with that, by the way, even though he got easily beaten up by Liam Smith. If there's enough money in it, I think they'll do it again. So the only route for him if he loses is probably Conor Benn, because his credibility as a punching at his weight, middleweight or super middleweight, is probably gone. The Canelo fight's gone. That's the fight he's probably wanting most of all after this. But it's still a fascinating fight.
It is. I mean, there are so many narratives to it, and I almost feel like, obviously, look, the names Ben and Eubank are the biggest story points in this, but I almost feel like both of them are coming out of their dad's shadow. It seems to be Conor and Chris now, as opposed to having Nigel and Chris Senior there. And look, we'll get into the Chris Senior thing, and I want him to be there. But I think both of these guys are their own personalities now, very similar, obviously, to their dads. But this isn't just the Ben Eubank name selling this. I think Conor and Chris are also selling it now. Yeah,
but Chris couldn't be who he is with this resonance and playing this figure that he plays and this character.
Is it a character?
Yeah.
Is it a character? It isn't just Chris. I've been around Chris. You don't think that's just him?
Yeah, it is. But he's even more of a parody when he's doing.
He's
got his line. He's very smart. He's got his line. You are a drugs cheat. I'm facing a drugs cheat. I'm the hero in this. I'm the hero for facing a drugs cheat, and I'm going to put this drugs cheat straight because you're a drugs cheat. If someone took a syringe, bent you over, and you're there, and they're putting it in your ass, as he said, and they're syringing it into you, and you didn't know what it was, you're still a drug cheat because you're responsible for doing what is done to your body. That's his line, and he'll take that all the way up to the fight. And afterwards, if he wins, he'll go, all I did was prove that no one should be a drugs cheat because I've just beaten a drugs cheat. And I've said that so many times because that's what I feel like I've got ringing in my ear from his narrative.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's a correct narrative, though, isn't it? I mean, Conor Benn failed a drug test, so Chris is going to use that all the way until they get into the ring, and I don't blame Chris for using that. Look, the biggest talking point though in the last sort of few weeks with two pressers and the amount of media both have done is the lack of Chris Eubank Senior, and I guess it's been highlighted more because we see Nigel Benn, so it's almost as though we wanted to see the whole gang together, if you like, and this is Conor Benn on Eubank Senior potentially being in the corner. This is what Conor had to say about it.
So it's sad to see that the relationship ain't working on their end, genuinely, and I mean that. It's sad to see. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that being funny, you know, because the relationship I have with my dad, it would be great to see you and your dad in your corner. I mean that. No sarcasm, not being a...
It's hard to believe.
No, I'm being... Well...
I've got to be careful. I don't want you drawing me into something.
No, listen, I'm just saying.
He's being sincere.
No, because you haven't heard the things he said leading up to this interview.
About you. Yeah, about you, of course. I think you're an idiot.
About our relationship, my father's relationship.
Your dad don't like you. Yes, I agree. Your dad don't like you. It's a matter of... That's a fact.
Him talking about him,
it's a fact.
I take everything he's saying with a grain of salt. I can't help it.
Okay, well, it's a matter of fact your dad don't like you, otherwise he'd be here. It's not really... It's not me just saying that or speculating that. It's the truth. But
you don't know what the truth is.
Okay.
You think
you don't know what the truth is. You think you know. It's all right back at you. But what I'm trying to say to you is it would be nice to see your dad there in your corner. Come find that. Because at the present moment, he thinks I'll knock you out. Again, a matter of fact. I'm not saying that being funny. That's what your dad believes. It's out there. Yeah. So, but I genuinely... It's not, again, you may think I'm being sarcastic. We are where we are because of our dads.
Yeah.
They've laid the foundation. We are like our dads. We are the double and carbon copy of our dads.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to see your dad in your corner and you mend that relationship. And whatever's come in between you guys, it'd be great to see. And I mean that. That's coming from my heart. I'm not being sarcastic. I say what I say and I mean what I say.
I felt, listening to that, again, you can go and watch the full clip, but I felt listening to that was the first time that we saw a bit of humility from Conor, an understanding of what Chris must be going through. Like, there's a connection these two have, which they won't admit, but it's clearly there. And that was the first time where, if both are playing characters to an extent, both of them took their character face off and were just young boys that would like to have their fathers around. And I think Conor, for once, kind of just went quiet and understood the pain that Chris might be going through not having Chris Senior around.
Yeah, and I think at this point, and I said it last week, and I can't remember who it was with. It was an interview with one of the YouTube channels, that we need to show, rather than pour conjecture on the relationship of Chris Senior and Junior, we need to show some respect to what is a family relationship that has been affected by the death of another son as well.
Yes.
That is clearly impacted on Senior. And, you know, I know both of them, as you do, and I think we just need to reserve a little bit of respect for Senior particularly. And I think Junior does that, and he's always gracious when talking about his dad. He says he needed to split from his father to be himself. He went with the willing cooperation to Roy Jones Jr. at the time. I remember asking his dad about it. But I think Chris Senior's come on the scene a little bit more in the last couple of weeks as well and said, I don't want to be around the ungracious nature of people screaming at each other around this promotion. And I think he's a very emotional man, Chris Senior.
Do you watch his YouTube channel?
That's what I mean. I've watched a couple of those clips recently, and I think
very
there's
emotional,
a great honesty
very
about
emotional.
him.
Yeah, and I hate the fact that this relationship, or the good and the bad of the relationship between Chris and his dad, is being played out and being used to kind of poke the bear. I hate it. I don't like the fact that we know about it, even because you can see how emotional both get I'm like, why is this being played out in front of our eyes? I get it.
Agree. I think there's pain on Chris's face when Conor Benn is saying, your dad doesn't even like you.
Yes.
He doesn't know his father doesn't like him. They're being cruel to each other, both of them. And, we some of us have lost our fathers, Eddie, some of us, our fathers are ill. So you can imagine what it's like that being played out in public. And it's not a nice thing. And they're lighting fires under each other all the time, these two.
I will say this, though. It's got the public interest. I mean, 1.5 million views in 3 days. That's what it's had on Piers Morgan's show. 1.5 million.
How is Turki Al-Sheikh going to get these kind of fights? Is he going to be interested in these that aren't for world title belts? This isn't about rankings. This is about legacy. It's about sometimes when you put people together, matchmaking just creates great fights. Are we going to get that interest from Turki Al-Sheikh? I know he's invested in this financially. Are we going to get those kind of fights from Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh as well, do you think?
I think so. And I know it's not the same, but I almost feel like there's that kind of heat and spice between Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily need a world title strap. And obviously that's part of Ring Magazine and what they're doing in America.
Neither does Canelo or Benavidez. That wouldn't need a world title strap.
No.
They're out there.
But that wouldn't have, I don't know if that would have the same animosity.
Yeah.
Whereas this does. Very quickly, wrapping up this, £100,000 fine. You said you spoke to Robert Smith from the British Boxing Board of Control a few days ago. Can you tell him when you do speak to him that is obscene, that number? Where have they got that from? 100,000 for an egg slap? I mean, come on, you've been at so many different press conferences down the years, Gareth, where fighters have gone way above and beyond that. And it's been a lesser fine or a slap on the wrist. 100,000 for Chris Eubank Jr., who is always on his best behavior. It's not like he has previous. Say, for example, this was Derek Chisora. I think we both say, okay, fair. He's done so much stuff at press conferences. Eubank doesn't deserve that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, they punished him very hard. And Robert Smith said it was inflation. Just to explain that because it was 25 grand when Derek Chisora had his fine, whenever it was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said it was premeditated. That's what the panel decided. Maybe they're basing on our understanding of him earning 8 to 10 million. I think he's going to earn 10 million for this. But yeah, it was very harsh. I thought it was very harsh as well. And maybe it's 1%, not as harsh as the 3 million that Mike Tyson had to pay for biting both of Evander Holyfield's ears. But he's been made an example of, Chris Eubank, unfortunately. And there wasn't really an explanation for it other than inflation and that it was premeditated.
Do we know, and this is, again, apologies to put this on to you, but I have seen people ask the question in the last couple of days since this fine was sort of put out there. Do we know where this money goes to?
Yeah, I did ask him. I did ask him, and I did know anyway, that it goes to funds for ex-boxers, the board administrator, and for training, medical purposes, for training new referees and judges. It is used for charitable and organised works rather than anything else. So look, he's got 150 to pay because he's got 50 to pay for the fighters that had camps for the last 2.5 years ago. So it's
lucky he is making 10 million. Lucky he is making a good 8 figures for his fight. Gareth, my man, as always, thank you very, very much. Busy show. I will say this, Gareth, every time or everywhere I go, considering the work that both of us do outside of this, right? You do loads of stuff. I'm doing loads of bits as well. Everyone pulls me up about this show. They're like, I love you and Gareth. Everyone pulls me up about this. So I don't know what
I love you and Gareth as well. So it's all good.
I don't know if it's our 3rd or 4th year, but the show's getting a lot of love from people, which is always good.
That's lovely.
All right, you've been listening to Find Out Extra on talkSPORT 2. Big thanks as always to my main man, Gareth A. Davies. Remember, if you've missed any of the show, you can listen to it as a podcast. Find it under the Fight Night banner on the talkSPORT app on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from. We'll be back as always next week.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.